I got a letter recently from one of the songwriters in my mailing list community, and they had written to me because I had sent an email to the more than 12,000 people on the mailing list asking them two very simple questions. The first question was, what is your biggest challenge with songwriting? And the second question is, what do you think is getting in the way of that? And I got hundreds and hundreds of replies, which I'm very grateful for. And what I've noticed is that there are some really common challenges. This particular challenge, written to me by Jessie, is so relatable that I really wanted to address it here because I think it really gets to the heart of songwriting and what it takes to make songwriting a part of your life. So here's the letter from Jessie. Jessie says, here's my biggest challenge, finding the time. When I was young and broke, I could write, play, record all the time. Now I have a family, a high-paying job, all the gear I could dream of, and no time to do it. So what I'd love to do is show you 3 systems that have worked really well for me over the past 25 years as a songwriter, some of which has resulted in commercial success, but really what it's given me is a life that has creativity and fun and play and frustration, all of that stuff, but it's all part of a wonderful package that is built into it because of these systems. So the first system, and maybe it's a system, maybe it's not a system, maybe it's just a habit, but let's call it a system because it's the idea of something that you can do regularly and repeat it over time, okay? So we'll call it a system. Is based on the idea that one thing that gets in the way of making songwriting a part of your life is the false notion that what you need is like 2 hours or 3 hours to do work of any worth. And part of the system here is making this a daily practice, adding it in to the routine of your life, making it a habit. And when you make it a habit, especially if you do this in the morning, but you don't have to do it in the morning, is that you turn on your songwriter brain. You walk through your day and you move through your life thinking like a songwriter. Even when you're doing other things, even when you're working your job, you are thinking in terms of metaphor. You're thinking in terms of sensory experience. You are making interesting and unusual combinations and relationships between ideas. So let me give you 3 things that you can do in 5 to 10 minutes every day. The first thing is a writing exercise called sense writing. Now, sense writing can be anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes. What you do is give yourself a random object and then spend 5 to 10 minutes free writing from whatever association comes up related to that random object, but stay sense bound. So ground your writing in a sensory experience or memory. Seek to paint a vivid, visceral sensory description of a scene, situation, moment, or experience. This can lead to wonderful lyrics, it can lead to interesting song ideas, it can guide you to concepts for songs, but one of the most powerful things that it does is it helps you quickly create interesting and personal associations. A second exercise you can do in 5 minutes is an exercise called metaphor collisions. Metaphor collisions is essentially taking 2 random nouns and fusing them together into a metaphor. So I might take a random noun like dolphin and microphone, and I'm going to turn that into a metaphor. The microphone is a dolphin. Now that seems absurd, and it is slightly absurd, but the magic is all in what we do next. So what we then spend 2 or 3 minutes doing is expanding that metaphor, exercising the neural pathways in our brain that create interesting and novel connections between 2 seemingly unrelated ideas. When I force myself to think about like, what on earth is the connection between a dolphin and a microphone, I might come up with something shockingly original. The microphone is a dolphin, and when I listen back to my recorded voice, sometimes there is a good idea surfacing for air. So one of the things that you can see there is that the microphone is a dolphin is a slightly absurd idea, but I've come up with something really interesting. The idea that sometimes good ideas surface for air. I kind of love that, and that's magic. And that took me a minute to do, and imagine if you did that every day. A third exercise you can do is rhyme ladders. So one thing you can do is open up a physical rhyming dictionary or use an online rhyming dictionary like RhymeZone or B Rhymes, and just plug in any random word and let it generate the rhyme possibilities. Now the idea there is to put anywhere between 5 to 10 words that rhyme with each other on a page and just spend 5 to 10 minutes picking 2 and creating rhyming couplets out of those words. Once again, we're practicing 2 things there. We are practicing creating neural pathways in our brain that connect unexpected ideas. And it also teaches us something about great lyric writing. We start to tune in to words that rhyme, and when we start to add to that bank, what it helps us do when it comes to the act of really writing a song that we care about, we have more to draw on rather than the same rhyme cliches that can often like pin us us into a songwriting corner. But there are two components of this kind of first system, all right, that I think are really important. The idea of how do you build this into an already busy schedule? Well, there are two things that I learned from Atomic Habits that really, really help. The first is a concept called habit stacking. So when we want to add something in or change our behavior in some meaningful and positive way, a really great way to do it is to attach the new thing that we want to be doing to something that we do anyway. So an example of this, not in the songwriting world, but just as an example of like behavioral change and habit formation, I've recently been doing a lot more meditation, which is something that I've dipped in and out of over the last 20 years, but I'm really trying very hard to create a habit around. Now, I also go for a jog like 2 or 3 times a week. So what I've started to do is just stack a 10-minute meditation onto the end of my jog. You know, I jog for 20 or 30 minutes, and then when I get home, instead of like walking in the door, there's a little bench in a tiny little park just around the corner. I just sit on the bench and I turn on the meditation for 10 minutes. And stacking the new thing onto something I already do makes the likelihood of me doing the new thing so much higher. So one thing I encourage you to do here is think about what is something that you already do in your day that you can just tack on this new habit to, so that it just blends into a thing that is already a part of your routine. It might be your morning coffee, it might be your lunchtime break, it might be a walk that you take for 10 minutes. You can do these exercises not as writing exercises, but into a voice memo while you're walking. There are so many other things that we do as habits and routines in our day that we can stack this new thing onto and really increase the likelihood that it becomes a habit, it becomes a part of our life as well. The other thing I will add into this system of doing something small more regularly is that I find it really, really productive to find 30 minutes that is dedicated songwriting time. And the way to really carve this into your life is to put it in your calendar, make it an appointment or a date. It is in there and it doesn't move, but only 30 minutes. Because again, if we put 60 minutes or 90 minutes or 2 hours, that amount of time is really easy for us to kind of like throw into the waste bin when something else comes up. My suggestion for that 30 minutes is also that it's not goal oriented. It's not that I'm going to write a song or even part of a song. It's just that this is songwriting. So it's much more about process than goals. And so that for me often looks like turning on some music, like turning on a playlist of songs and songwriters that I love. They might be classic songwriters, they might be new songwriters, just doing some immersive listening, but it's not passive listening. What I like to do is sit there with an instrument in my hand and be playing along. And what I find happens for me, and it may also happen for you, is that inevitably as I'm sitting there playing along, singing along, ideas start coming. And when I'm listening to more than one song or one artist, the ideas start to cross-pollinate. I might be playing a chord progression from one song, then I listen to a completely different song, and there's some word or image that sparks an idea. And because I was doing this other thing, these two things create some new way forward. And before you know it, you've got an idea on the burn. The other really important thing to understand about 30 minutes is that it usually takes the brain and the psyche about 30 minutes to just relax, to just get out of its own way. So don't leave before that 30 minutes is up. And often what I find is around that 30-minute mark, I start to hit a flow. An idea becomes so apparent that I don't want to leave the desk. And so often what I will do is spend more than 30 minutes, but I don't have any expectation of myself to spend more than 30 minutes, and I only put 30 minutes in my calendar. The third system here is really about how you capture ideas. And part of this is to really address the challenge of giving yourself time, but then opening up a blank document or a blank page and then struggling with blank page syndrome. Part of what can help make songwriting more regular is when our songwriting is more efficient, which is to say that good ideas come to us faster. And the ways in which we capture and keep our ideas and our references can be really, really helpful. So at the moment, and for the past couple of years, I have used Evernote as my idea capturing app. I'm not sponsored by Evernote, I'm just telling you about it because I use it. One of the reasons I like it is because in a single note, you can write text, You can hit the audio button and just record audio straight into the note. You can put web links into it. You can embed Spotify. You can sort of collect all this multimedia inspiration and ideas inside one note, rather than having like 400 voice memos in a voice memo app that are all called voice memo 35, 36, 37, 38. You can keep voice recordings associated to a specific idea. One helpful system that I have inside my notes here that I use, and I know many professional songwriters use, is that I have 5 really important notes. And these are just individual notes that are kind of a running list. So one note is called titles. Now this is a list of running titles. So this is different to lines of lyric. These are words or phrases that to me come pre-loaded or pre-packaged with some kind of concept or story. I feel like the phrase is interesting enough that it could actually be the hook of a song. So here, for example, is my title note, and it just sort of goes on and on and on. So those are great song starters on any day. Another note that I have is called lines. So here you have lines. Now, what is lines? Lines are interesting lines of lyric that I hear, that I make up, that I read somewhere. I might read a line and then add to it. I put it in here. It's different to a title. It's something that is interesting and evocative, but it's not attached to a title or a concept yet. So for example, the first one here is, don't be so humble, you're not that great. I heard that on a podcast and I thought it was really funny and interesting and pithy, so I wrote it down. Here's another one from a podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts. There are 2 types of people. Some walk into a room and think, here I am. Others arrive and think, there you are. So I've got my list of lines, and again, those can just spark interesting ideas on any day, and sometimes keeping them in the same note can help you cross-pollinate between them, and sometimes there are interesting connections to be made. Another note that I have here is melodies. So this is a random collection of melodies. If I have a melodic idea, I would just record it into this note, but at least it's not confused with other voice memos that I might be taking about other random things. I have another note in here that's called chord progressions. So this is where I capture links to songs that I listen to where there's something really interesting about the chord progression. And what I'll do is, in one of those 30-minute sessions, for example, I might start by opening up one of these songs and listening to that song, playing along the chord progression, trying to figure out what's going on in the chord progression. And then I can seek to use the thing that I liked in my own way. So I might change the key, I might change the time signature, change the tempo, change the feel, groove, rhythm. All of these things are ways to take something that you really like and make it your own. The other note category that I like to organize ideas into in Evernote, in my note it's called techniques to try, but we might call it songwriting methods. So this is more like approaches to songwriting. So the first one in here says, starting a song with a chorus. So that's not specific to melody or lyrics or anything. It's more about song form. It might be other things like using nothing but breath to create a rhythm track. It might be something really simple, like using nothing but a 4-chord loop to write a song, or it might be something really complex, like write a song using parallel modulation. It's a place for me to collect interesting approaches or processes or methods for writing songs that can spark ideas. So having a good note-taking system is a really powerful way to get over the feeling of wasting time as a songwriter and become more efficient. Really having a reference file that will allow you to sit down on one of your 30-minute sessions and have things to refer to immediately. So we come to our third and most important system that can really help you make time rather than relying on just having time or relying on willpower. This is the most powerful thing you can do to almost completely eliminate reliance on willpower, which is totally fallible. And this third thing is all about seeking accountability. What do I mean by this? What I mean is enroll in a course, enroll in a songwriting group. I will definitely include a link to the songwriting groups that I run. The idea here is make yourself accountable. So about 2 years ago, I got commissioned to write an album of original songs for a Penguin Random House audiobook. So I had to write at least 8 songs, get them written, revised, produced, recorded, mixed and mastered within a 12-month period. So in order to really hit the deadlines there, I needed accountability. So I joined a songwriting group, and everything changed for me when I joined a songwriting group. The songwriting group gives you so many crucial things that are going to help you make the time. The first thing it gives you is a deadline. So an inherent part of the songwriting groups that I run, which are very much modeled on my experience of being in a songwriting group, is that there is a deadline. You get a songwriting prompt, and in my groups, that prompt comes every 2 weeks. And every 2 weeks, there's a deadline, and you must submit the song by the deadline. So there is a limited amount of time in which you have to write a new song. Deadlines are extremely powerful for productivity. The other thing that joining a songwriting group gives you is accountability to a group of people. There is a cohort that you are with, which means that there are people who you are going to disappoint if you don't submit on the deadline. And there are also people there that you can impress when you do something that you're really proud of. The other thing you get is a prompt. And a lot of the time, getting an external prompt is like magical. I can't quite explain it, but there's something very different about someone saying to you, write a song about this, or write a song in this way, or listen to this and write a song like that. There's something different that happens when a prompt comes externally rather than internally, and that can be the magic sauce if you are struggling to come up with ideas, or you have ideas but are struggling to bring them to fruition. The other thing you get when you join a songwriting group like this is you get feedback. And feedback, we all know intuitively, and also through mountains of research, is one of the most powerful things that can help you progress in your craft. The psychology of putting yourself on the line by joining a group or a class or a course or something like that is just incredibly powerful. I have found in my life that without something like that, songwriting and creativity can be the first thing to cave in when life's other demands start to knock on the door. But when we are enrolled in something, it gives us permission to carve out boundaries around that time and space. And it's really the difference between 8:30 p.m. on a Wednesday night, you're feeling tired, you've been at work all day. If you're not enrolled in something that has a deadline and a community and a system of accountability, you're just going to watch Netflix or go to bed. But if something is due the next morning, you might actually make the decision to use the hour between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m. to write a song. And that is the difference between having time versus making time. And that is really how we make time. And an hour might seem ridiculous to you, but it's really not. You can write a great song in under an hour. And if you're curious about a really structured, methodical way that you can do that, please check out this video right here. Thanks guys. I hope that was helpful. We'll talk soon.